I want to talk to you today about the Internet of Things in a certain way. I want to talk to you about the fact that the Internet of Things can make us human again. In the perspective of Moore's law, which is doubling the power of our computers every whatever period, which is going to be the guiding theme of our time together, we have to realize that what we know about the world used to be affordably limited, but this affordance is not ours anymore. The Romans who built the Colosseum did so that it survived 2,000 years, not because that is the way they wanted to build it, but because they could afford to waste a lot of material, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and they didn't know any better. This is what we cannot afford anymore. We are in a pond at the last doubling before all the slime submerges every available space left. And unless we are happy with that outcome, we have to understand what is the new way of understanding the world. Still, our ignorance is going to widen. The answers and the knowledge that we find in the world does nothing but multiply the number of questions that we can ask, even at a faster rate than not the answers that we have just found. However, we can still apply this newfound knowledge to build what is our future. So I want to quickly go on and tell you what is the Internet of Things, to define it a little bit. And I'm using it through the neologism created by Bruce Sterling, the science fiction author and the godfather of my company, who calls spines from the contraction of space and time a new category of objects, which know where they are, when they are, have communication, memory, computation capabilities on board, and most importantly, sensors that enable them to see for the first time after our computers have only had us humans as their senses. They are now becoming capable of sensing directly the world. So the evolution of these devices that are now coming to our radar screen because their change is quicker and quicker, and we have to take into account with every decision we make almost daily their evolution. The number of devices that are surrounding us, which used to be famously wrongly predicted by IBM's former president, a few dozen, and they didn't stop there. Then they became a few thousand, then a few million. And now we are at the last moment with the few billion mobile phones at every human's disposal, where these objects can rely on us for their functioning. And the next generation of networks, the Internet of Things, the sensor networks that are coming, will have to be designed, deployed, substituted, managed based on completely different paradigms than the ones that we used in the past. So I want to highlight a few of these characteristics, which, in my opinion, are a necessary part of these networks and their evolutions. First of all, the way that we describe the world in the field of internet-connected devices is the granularity through which we can address them. The migration that we are going to see through IPv4 and IPv6, which are two internet protocols, are going to be very important, because even if we are not going and reach the fine-grained description of our quantified world, which is available on the physical scale of the number of atoms of the universe, it is the case that the number of addressable devices through IPv6 is really enormous. And as we draw these fine lines of description, addressability, and understandability in the world, we have a chance of deriving knowledge from all of it. However, just as we realize how cumbersome these devices have potentially already become, by all of us having a mobile phone, a photo machine, a video machine, a computer, all around us, it is necessary for these machines to become autonomous, exactly because of their numerosity. When there will be not one or a dozen, but hundreds or thousands of these devices around us, they will have to be self-sufficient. And some of this is already available. Some of this we can already experience. A vacuum cleaner that is capable of finding the electric socket before running out of power certainly is more useful than the one that we have to plug in ourselves. And this characteristic, autonomy, self-sufficiency of the objects that comprise the Internet of Things, is going to be universal. There has been an evolution of networks. The first that we have really taken advantage of gave us universal and uniform access to data, from which we derived knowledge. What we call today social network is nothing but universal and uniform access to applications, which are available on any kind of internet-connected device. And the next generation of uniform access is going to be through our sensors to the physical world. The redundancy through which this will be achieved is fundamental. We cannot rely on single points of failure as we need to understand, as we must understand the world around us, as it very, very visibly happened recently when the only real source of fine-grained measurements for CO2 sources exploded at launch, and the budget is not there to substitute it. The way these devices are going to communicate is also going to be rather different from what we are used to hear, from what we are used to rely on. What we call the machine-to-machine communication index, the percentage of messages that go between machines without reaching human decision-making, is characteristic of the various networks. And in our opinion, it is extremely important that through the autonomy that the networks of spines must achieve, we also realize that the large majority of the communication will be lost to us voluntarily beyond what we can achieve and what we want to listen to. Already when you go on a highway, your mobile phone is talking to the various cells without you even realizing, always agreeing what are the right ways of communicating and to whom it must communicate in order for you to be able to talk. And an example of this is in the Large Hadron Collider, where an enormous amount, 99.99% of the data collected is thrown away without ever being seen by a human, because all the filters and all the decision-making has been delegated to the machines. And lastly, as I mentioned before, these machines are not going to be blind to the world. Not only are mobile phones, the most advanced versions, have many, many sensors in them already. Our cars, which are mobile computing devices and mobile computing platforms, have between 50 and 100 sensors. And it is important for us to try, those of us who are geeks and want to hack these machines, to realize that it can be done, and it maybe should be done, in order to better understand what is going on. Also because we are not completely sure that we understand what are the liabilities that we incur into when the car of the most advanced model decides to brake because we didn't, and maybe slams into a car on our side instead of slamming into one in front. The people who are concerned with exploring what are these evolutions and how does the change from the traditional internet to the Internet of Things happen are numerous. And there are large companies, government agencies, meta-governmental entities, and there are all kinds of declarations that can sound somewhat silly at the beginning, even when people who know what they are saying are making them, where there are alliances being formed, where the traditional game of standard setting, public standards, personal or private industrial standard setting games and dances are being played. And this is all natural. This is all very important when the Internet of Things is perceived as a strategic value to superpowers, and when large companies like Intel organize conferences where their chief technology officer describes the 10-year roadmap they already have to build a 7 trillion node network alongside the ones that we already know about. My company, the Singularity University, Humanity Plus, another organization, are all concerned and thinking about what the consequences of the Internet of Things are. But the reason why this is so important, that is so necessary, becomes apparent when you look at this graph. 10,000 years ago, humans were nothing but a little part of our biosphere. The total sum of terrestrial vertebrate biomass of humans plus our pets and cattle, domesticated animals, 10,000 years ago amounted to approximately 1% of the biomass. After an eye blink in terms of geological evolution, after 10,000 years, the total sum of humans, our pets, and our cattle amount to 98% of the total terrestrial vertebrate biomass. This is the unsustainable Anthropocene, the geological era which is defined by human technological civilization. And what we started with, carving designs on clay tablets and baking them in an oven, is the same we are doing today. Instead of using coarse-grained tools, we are now using fine-grained lasers and X-ray lithography. And instead of using wooden ovens, we are using more evolved ovens, but still is the same thing. However, just over the horizon, we have new approaches like nanotechnological building blocks, like biological building blocks, which are becoming tools that we can actively use, that are going and enable us to understand and sense much better what is going on around us in the world, and understand and adapt to it in a greater efficiency, which is definitely needed if our children have to share the planet with us. So let's look at a few examples, because these are fundamental, of course, in order to anchor our understanding of what these images inspire us. And I want to show you a few current examples from what WideTag developed in the past couple of years. Like, for example, the SPIME that measures CO2 concentrations in the air, being able to Twitter them and to aggregate them on Google Maps. And we are in discussions with mobile phone manufacturers to integrate these approaches in new generation mobile phones. Or the social energy meter, which connects a homogeneous social network to the emotional visualization of your real-time energy consumption, in order to make sure that not only geeks can understand and act upon their understanding of what is going on in their home or their business, but also people who are not accustomed at reading wiggly graphs. Or White Noise, which you are welcome to purchase on the App Store, which is now free thanks to South by Southwest, where we unleashed it on the world, which turns your iPhone into a noise measuring device where decibel measurements are then once again tweeted and aggregated in a map which shows what is the noise quality of your environment. These example applications and projects give a hint of what is going to be available in the future, where we have already autonomous cars. And what you see on this photo, very ugly external appliances glued to the car, after a couple of years, because this photo is of 2007, are totally and invisibly integrated behind the windshield and the rear view mirror. And the computers that have been in the back of the car, completely occupying it, are now nothing but a simple bag that you can shove anywhere in the car. Next generation communications are going to be enabled by new network designs. And these network designs have the characteristic adaptability that I described before. Energy, not only in the home or at individuals, but also in the design of smart grids, with projects that go from China to the Middle East, to the American continent, are promising a new efficient way of producing, distributing, aggregating, acquiring electrical energy. And of course, the quantified self, this new movement, new fashion of individuals trying to measure, record, analyze, and better understand their physiological indicators. The evolution of these approaches will take a lot of time. In the short term, it will appear that they develop actually more slowly than they could. And there are those who feel that they will come only in 20 years or more. But what I feel is that the development of the Internet of Things is not actually an event. It is a process that will look like a patchwork. That is why we are calling it the Internet of Things, because it is the connection of more and more networks. But it is important that it be born in a collaborative fashion, in an open fashion, in an interoperable fashion. Otherwise, it won't healthily develop. It would be actually stopped. So what I think should happen, and whether this might or might not depends on the individual efforts of all of us, is that finally, after many, many years, actually thousands of years of slavery to our own technology, we will be able, in this very strange time where we live not only in the space between Planck scales and universal scales, not only 14 billion years after the Big Bang, but very close to what we feel could be what is called a technological singularity, in a coevolution through our planet, in civilizations that used to clash and now depend on each other's, superpowers that must act in order to prevent the collapse of one another because they are interdependent, we will be free to be human again and stop being the slowest and most unreliable interface between our computed, automated processes, our industrial processes, our development and design processes. We can actually become and think what we want to do independently of our machines. And as we come to this conclusion, we will be able and look at ourselves and not only think of what humanity was and what it meant to be human, but according to many, we will start and subsume the machine systems that have sustained us and that we managed in the past. And as we subsume these machine systems, we will be able and redefine what is to be human and what is humanity as it marches towards the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, so far. Because we're not done yet, I bet that there are questions from the audience. Yuri, you might want to start. Okay, I'll go all the way to the back.
Sorry, I'll try to formulate my question this time better. You talk about freedom and talk about sensing the whole world when we spread the Internet of Things. But I don't think it's freedom, and I'll tell you why. Because when we sense everything around the world, according to you, we get the truth. But getting the truth is not the freedom. Because when I'm in my car and my car tells me what to do, I cannot ignore what the car wants me to do. This freedom is not the truth, but freedom is bending the truth. When somebody dies and my kid is asking what happens, I can tell him the truth, or I can bend the truth. And that's freedom, and not sensing everything around, because what you're telling is not going to happen.
The best people, I very much agree, so much so that we have a dialogue that is going on since more than 2 years with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is the prominent defender of what is privacy and freedom in the digital age. We do believe that knowledge can help. A lot of what we assume is freedom today is just magnifying and elevating ignorance. So I agree that there are a lot of challenges here. And the answers or the suggestions that I give are not final for sure. We do see that, for example, in Germany, where Google says, we'd like to do Street View. And the German state says to Google, no, we maybe don't want you to do Street View. So all of these things are extremely delicate, and they require a constant dialogue. Here?
Yep. Who's faster?
Thank you for a very interesting speech. As Copenhagen demonstrated, stopping the climate change by political decisions seems to be extremely hard. So, do you think we should automate the systems to save ourselves from?
We have a choice to make, and what is important is that we discuss and explicitly understand what is the choice. The political level, which expresses and allocates the resources that could be necessary to execute whatever choice we make, is in dire need of more and better advice. Recently, there has been what I feel a positive development. Some governments stopped to be advised by astrologers and have stopped to be advised by horoscopes and dogma and holy books. In my opinion, these decisions should not be taken based on that advice, but certainly we are not at the optimum. So regardless of the decision we make, it is very, very important that we do not let them be made out of ignorance once again. I personally believe that, yes, we should automate this, yes. Because the feedback loop is just too slow otherwise. We cannot afford, you know, a 20 years project and then 5 years later when somebody new gets elected, forget about it or get unfunded or things like that. Or the squabbles we have seen in the Copenhagen meeting. There was somebody back there here, but yeah, that person.
Final question. Last question.
Oh no, he had one, and then he. Let's have two. Hey, I'm here. I have no
Short
history.
question.
Yes, I'll keep it short. Is nature digital or analog?
According to Stephen Wolfram, nature is digital. If you have had the chance to read his book, it's wonderful, A New Kind of Science. However, he has been strongly criticized because of not taking into account quantum effects. I personally haven't decided yet, but I'm leaning towards the digital. Okay. Here, last question.
Yeah, this is mostly a question for me to kind of understand your position and I guess kind of the singularity movement that you, for me at least, represent in some way. You just mentioned governments being led by astrologers and
I was referring
superstitious.
to George W. Bush.
Right, okay. So I'm wondering, is the only the only truth kind of worth pursuing in your regard the one that can be offered by science? That's one, and then the other is should this truth be quantifiable?
Okay. I am open to other methods that have the evolutionary fitness of the scientific method. And even if it has only been 500 years that we have been able and give a name to it, implicitly we have been using trial and error forever. Except that when we didn't share our discoveries, other people had to die for the same mistakes we have made before them. So the scientific method evolves. And in my opinion, the rate of evolution is itself accelerating. For example, it has now become the norm for scientific papers to be freely accessible, that there is not a paywall or a pay gate in order to access scientific journals. It is going to be even more open in the future. So if I were to make a bet in a market for ideas, definitely my money would be on that, on the scientific method, and against an alternative emerging quickly in order to help us instead. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you again, David.